Hi, I'm Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake.
It is a wild experience. I mean, just speaking about it now, it just is so bizarre. It's so.
Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake.
So, like, what happened to me was in the sac around your heart, which is called your pericardium, there was a tiny congenital hole.
Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake.
In my case, I was working out. I was doing some of this high intensity interval training kind of stuff, and it was beating really fast because I was working out. And so one of those beats, it popped. The right ventricle popped through that little tiny hole, and got caught inside of the hole, and it interrupted the entire electrical flow of the heart.
So like a scrotum getting caught in the zipper.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake.
And I keep thinking about this as I'm listening to your experience. There are so many things that I just take for granted in my life, right?
Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake.
There are certain aspects of Infants on Thrones and Brother Jake that, like, I kind of feel, I mean, I have more mixed feelings about. So, like, there's a certain amount of, like,
Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake. Brother Jake.
I didn't really have a near-death experience. I had a post-death experience.
Right.
This is Infants on Thrones, the philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the Quorum.
After your faith has let you down, look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
Welcome back to a very special episode of Infants on Thrones. This is episode 697, The Triumphant Return of Brother Jake.
Hi, I'm Brother Jake. Now, there are a lot of people out there who say,
Now, for those of you who've been listening to this podcast for a while, you may know that 2 years ago, November 28th, 2018, Jake, at the tender age of 32, suffered cardiac arrest. Essentially, he died. And this story that you're going to hear today is a story about life after death, but maybe not in the way that you might think. I want to read something that Jake's wife, Erica, wrote on December 20th, 2018. This is something that she posted to her Facebook page. On November 28th, 2018, my best friend and partner, for all intents and purposes, died. His heart stopped for no observable reason and was put on maximum life support. I personally don't think that the medical field should be playing the role of God and deciding when an individual should live or die, but they decided to bring Jake back from the dead. The result of this is that Jake has been hospital-bound for 3 weeks as he has clawed back his life. He has come so far and continues to fight for everything he can. He will now go to intensive rehab for the next 4 to 6 weeks to keep going. I am completely overwhelmed by the love, support, and care that we have received from the rather large army that has formed around us from all of the communities that we call our own. I feel your sorrow, tears, and joys you have all shared with us. Whether I have been able to respond to your texts, emails, messages, GoFundMe donations, cards, etc. or not, thank you for all of your messages of love and support. Every one of them is appreciated. The only way I can describe this experience is that it has been a nightmare. Our future is unknown, but the wonderful people who we have surrounded ourselves with are all that matters. Please continue to keep Jake in your thoughts and prayers as he progresses in his recovery. We will need a village to make it through.
Hi, I'm Brother Jake.
Hi, being a Mormon,
I'm Brother
people
Jake.
are always asking
Now,
me
hi,
why
I'm
do
Brother
people
Jake.
out there?
How
So
many
in
watch
response to all these so-called intellectuals talking about we don't know arbitrary news articles and history books and a bunch of other things.
So it's been 2 years, and a lot of people have asked, how's Jake doing? Well, today you're going to find out for yourself. So with no further ado, I give you the return The triumphant return of Brother Jake.
You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down. You're the best around.
Okay, I've got you back on.
All right, awesome. Let's do it.
So tell me, Jake.
Yeah.
It's been almost 2 years. Well,
has.
it's been over 2 years since you've been on Infants on Thrones.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know what the last time I was on Infants on Thrones. It was
Sometime in it was either October or November. I remember I was doing one that I think I invited you to join on the terrible day.
Yeah.
And I always thought, yeah, if only you would have accepted that.
Yeah. It would have never happened.
Things would have been so different. But
you'd have protected my pericardium.
Okay, so tell me what that is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Okay. So the what happened to me is, well, it was cardiac arrest. So it's different than a heart attack. And I'm sorry, my dog is barking now.
I love hearing your dog bark. Let's just, like, your dog wants to be part of this too. Everybody does. I
want to fucking choke him out. I can really do. Oh my God. When he barks, I'm just like, oh, shut up. Anyway, all right. So what happened was I had a sudden, unexplained, at the time, cardiac arrest. So a cardiac arrest is different than a heart attack, which I did not know before all of this. But a cardiac arrest is essentially like a heart attack is like turning down the dimmer of your heart until it goes off. Yeah. So like it kind of slowly goes down. Your heart function just flatlines eventually. Cardiac arrest is like shutting off a light bulb, like a light switch. So, it's kind of all of a sudden thing. So like what happened to me was in the sac around your heart, which is called your pericardium, there was a tiny congenital hole. So congenital it's not heritable. It's something that developed probably in utero or something. But it could be, I mean, it's fairly common, but most people don't have to deal with it at all because it's something that's like asymptomatic and nothing happens from it. But in my case, I was working out, I was doing some of this high intensity interval training kind of stuff, and I had been dehydrated and I was like really working out hard, and it was just one of those kind of 1 in a million heartbeats where my pericardium was kind of reduced in size because I was dehydrated, and it was beating really fast because I was working out. And so one of those beats, it popped, the right ventricle popped through that little tiny hole got caught inside of the hole and interrupted the entire electrical flow of the heart.
So like a scrotum getting caught in a zipper.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Right. Yeah. The whole thing shut down.
Your heart scrotum got stuck.
And then I was like, we're shutting down.
Yeah.
So like at that point it was now all of this, like, I just want to note, like, to this, everything at this part this is all hearsay to me. Like, I know it's all secondhand knowledge for me.
People told you because you weren't
because I wasn't quite there. You know, it was something where there's like a big hole in my memory from essentially when it happened, which is like, what is it, November 28th, November 28th, and up through like probably January, like mid-January of 2019. So during that kind of 6-week period, it was just like there's a big black hole in my memory. So what happened anyway, so Erica
and how old were you? You were like 32?
Yeah, I was 31 at the time. I
31.
turned 32 in December of that year.
Okay.
So yeah, I was 31 at the time, and
like a very healthy 31-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like running marathons, but like I was somebody that was in, you know, above median kind of fitness.
Yeah.
but yeah, it was like one of those things where I dropped dead. So I obviously was like collapsed and making strange sounds, and Erica was like, "Are you okay, Jake?" And then I wasn't answering, and so then she called 911, and they actually kind of walked her through CPR, and like she started doing CPR, and then the EMS came and defibbed me like several times, but I didn't revive, and so they put me on like a mechanical CPR machine, took me back to Duke, and then hooked me up to an ECMO. So an ECMO is, I don't remember what that acronym stands for. It's but
Someone
essentially
who's not Mormon anymore.
what?
An ECMO. Someone who's not Mormon
Yeah,
anymore.
it's Mo no Mo. The
Well, no,
ECMO.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they essentially what it is, it's a machine that takes your blood out of your veins, oxygenates it, and then pumps it back into your veins.
Because your heart
Your heart
wasn't
was like,
working
yeah,
to
my heart was like not,
oxygenate your blood.
yeah, there, it wasn't pumping hard enough to oxygenate my blood. Although my lungs were functioning enough to be able to do it, the heart wasn't really up to the task. So basically, they kind of had me in a way like artificially alive because of the ECMO for a while, and then eventually that stabilized, and there were various, I mean, the thing is, there's a bunch of, like, at that point my family started coming in, and Erica was like dealing with like spinning all these different plates and trying to keep everything afloat, and so like she was dealing with Jesse and childcare and like my medical care and my family coming in and putting them up in different, like, not in different like hotels in some cases, and like people's condos in other cases. It was just like all crazy kind of stuff. So, and I kind of want to leave that to, I don't really want to speak out of line around that, just because it's, I mean, at this point, like, it's her experience, not really my experience to like be there. So anyway,
but you, so if I remember, because I remember when I got that news, and it just such a frightening time for everyone who loves you, you know. And I remember hearing that you had been without oxygen to your brain for like an hour before you got to the hospital, something like that.
Yeah,
And
actually,
like the best case scenarios for a recovery for you was very bleak. And so the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you 2 years later, and the recovery that you've had, and like, how long did it take? About 6, 8, 9 months before you were like up walking again? And
yeah, like
it's just it's miraculous.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is like a very, I mean, it absolutely is a 1 in a million kind of
okay, so we don't have to use the word miracle, because there's all the baggage
yeah,
around
there's
it,
a lot of baggage around miracle. But basically what it's like is it's kind of like Return of the Jedi, you know, where Luke gets his hand cut off by Darth Vader and like finds out this devastating news and falls down, and then he drops off the edge of this immense space, like in the middle of Cloud City. But
I hate to tell you, it was Empire Strikes Back, Jake. That was Empire Strikes Back, not Return of the Jedi.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I said I didn't say. Sorry. So Empire Strikes Back, he gets his hand cut off.
There is no escape. Don't make me destroy you.
He falls in the middle of like this giant cavern, like in the middle of Cloud City, but he falls through a little hole and then ends up like in the Millennium Falcon.
Right.
And I kind of feel like I'm that, like in that scenario where it was like something really bad happened to me, but after that bad thing happened to me, a lot of really good things happened to me.
Yeah.
So that I could survive and you know, live on. So,
and assert your strength of will to do all that, because it was not an easy process.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't. yeah, it certainly wasn't. It was a very difficult kind of arduous. I mean, it was like a very arduous, like long, drawn out, protracted scenario. And to say I'm like on the other side, so to a certain extent, I am, right. So like I am obviously like I'm sitting here and I've seen the videos of myself like back in those early days, and compared to that right now, this is like really great. But it's not really to say like, oh, it's over now. It's something where it's like on a spectrum where I'm, slowly coming back still, even now. So, yeah, I would say like there were a few stages of recovery. Like the first stage was like the acute medical fallout, which is like in Duke, and I wasn't conscious for that. And then there was like when it got past those initial kind of roadblocks to like recovery, and I was trucking along. Then I moved on to like the inpatient rehab stuff. So that was like when I was in Shepherd Center in Atlanta, and there was, I mean, I could talk about that for a long time, but then there was outpatient rehab here in Durham and going to outpatient rehab in Raleigh, and then there's like kind of a fourth phase, in stage, I should say, in like getting back to work, like working part-time and getting back to like full normal, like going back to full more normal kind of life living.
Yeah.
So I'm on the long kind of tail of that, recovery process, that fourth stage of recovery. So yeah, that's kind of where I mean, that's where I'm at now. But my experience really kind of like my cognitively, I turned back on, or like rebooted in Atlanta.
And when you rebooted, there were like some things, like I remember reading a report that all of the statistical things, like high level statistical techniques you remembered, but like first grade addition math was just like, so like there was this really weird juxtaposition of the stuff that you knew and could do, and then other things that, like having a hard time remembering what the word for cucumber or something like that.
So, yeah. And like that was tough. Like I mean, so there were a lot of like very basic kind of elementary school stuff, not even elementary school, like preschool kind of things.
Yeah.
And like identifying colors, that took me freaking forever to like learn how to identify colors.
Really? What do you like what their names were, or just?
Yeah, what the names were really is where the issue was, because I could tell that colors were different. Like if you pointed at two colors, or three or four, whatever, I could tell that colors were different from each other, but the names of the colors, like somebody used the word teal to me when I was I was playing like beanbag toss game, cornhole game.
Yeah.
Not beanbag toss, cornhole.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you'd call it beanbag toss, but I don't know.
I'll allow it.
All right.
I remember playing that cornhole game with you and Heather in your backyard.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we were playing like a cornhole game, and somebody was like, "Hey, could you hand me the teal bag?" And I was like, "What the fuck is teal? Like, what is that? What are you saying? I've never even heard that. Doesn't sound like, that's not a color. That's not a color. There's no way that's a color." But eventually I was like, teal is a mixture of blue and green. Teal is a mixture of blue and green. Like I had to like memorize that kind of stuff. Like, and yellow and orange were like super hard. It was super hard for me to get the name right. I could tell they're different from each other, but I couldn't tell which one was yellow and which one was orange. So like,
And that just that is a result of the parts of your brain, the sections of your brain that were damaged. Is that what that?
yeah. I mean, it must be. But that was, I mean, that, okay. So that's like, these are, somewhat humorous anecdotes about this stuff about, I didn't remember how to, I forgot about colors and I forgot the names of stuff, and it was fun. I mean, it was whatever. It's funny. We laugh about it. There was also like, I had a couple pretty devastating like interactions or encounters with neuropsychologists. So like if there are any neuropsychologists, they're listening to this. I mean, the thing is, I had the in-house neuropsychologist at Shepherd Center was just like, I don't know if I don't want to hold too much against her, but like at the time, I just hated her, and she just made me feel so stupid and like so despondent about stuff. And like I'd have these like battery of tests, and she'd be like, "You did really poorly here and there and there and that. It like you did really bad at visual spatial reasoning. You did really bad at math. You did really bad processing speed, and like you're super behind and being able to, well, it's after processing speed, but there were these different tests that I took, and I just failed all of them. And like I failed all of them like way below, like way below my age / education level. So, and she's like, well, I would say, like, she didn't sugarcoat it at all. So she didn't like her bedside manner was like non-existent, in the sense of like, I came out of that interaction. I was just like so depressed and like so sad about everything that had happened, to me in the state of things, and that kind of thing. And then, so I was, it was just me and her for that one. And then we had a follow-up conversation with Erica on the conference call. And Dr. O'Neill asked me, if I remembered the last conversation that we had. And I was like, yeah, I remember that. You like just told me that I couldn't do anything. And like, you told me I was terrible at all these things. She's like, well, I don't really remember that way. And then she's like, well, I don't remember it that way. What I said was, and then she ended up going through the entire thing again with Erica on the phone. And just hearing it again was just like, so it was something where in the back of my head, for a long time after that whole conversation, that whole interaction, in the back of my head, like I could never get the voice of her just like beating me down out of there.
Wow.
And like, she just always was behind me, just saying that I was, I mean, in my mind. And the thing is,
Sure,
in her defense, like she was probably being super reasonable, and like it was, or she was just trying to, be upfront about like what was going on, or there are plenty of good rationale. There's plenty of good rationale for like treating a patient that way. But in my experience, subjectively, was so disheartening and like so disappointing and just gut wrenching of like having the rug of everything that I could do, that I thought, I had this image of myself as like a capable person that could do things and could make the most out of situations. And like, I was so inspired. I was like so motivated to like, come back from this experience and, build back better, or to
defy the odds.
Yeah. Like, and my whole experience, my mentality around this whole experience was like, fuck you can't tell me what to do, or like, you can't stop me, fuck you, see if you can stop me, I'm gonna power through this thing. And then basically like, she just took that entire facade that I built around myself and like just pulled out like just pulled out the guts of it, and
Yeah.
it was very disappointing. So anyway,
And do you still, I mean, is she still kind of in there, like wagging her finger at you a little bit? Like she's become that negative critical voice that that hounds you from time to time?
yeah, like there's a certain amount of like things where like, instances where like I'm slurring my speech or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she is just kind of back in there, doing, I still kind of hear her say
Mm.
that
Yeah.
and reiterate those points. And it just, it's very sad.
Yeah. So what would you do in those times where you were, you would go from an extreme of feeling like, fuck you, I'm going to overcome this. I'll show it. I'm going to defy the odds, to where like, oh my gosh, this is just like the worst. It sucks. Did you have those kinds of seesaw experiences a lot?
Not too much, to be honest. And I think that was certainly a good thing. I mean, it's certainly a good thing. There's so it reminds me of an experience that my brother actually told me about. And it was something that he went through. So, I mean, not that he went through, a Knox brain injury and things, but he went through, no, I'm gonna teach, I'm gonna go to like an object lesson.
All right.
But there was this, my brother and his wife had this minivan, and it broke down. It broke down, and my brother realized like, oh, it's the radiator. There's some sort of like, mechanical thing. He's like, I can figure out how to do this. And so he, took the car into his garage to start taking it apart, and then realized while he was doing it, they need to get like some other tool. And so he goes to Home Depot and rents a like one version of the tool, and it doesn't end up working. And he goes to like Lowe's and gets another version of the tool. And the thing is, he can't figure out how to like undo this one really tough bolt in the car. Like he needs to like unscrew that bolt to be able to replace the part that he's trying to fix. But he eventually realizes like, I can't do this without like, I can't do this with like tools I rent at Home Depot. Like I need like a professional garage to, get this thing fixed. But the thing is, and he's like, oh crap. And he wanted to like give up. He's like, I just want to give up and get rid of this thing. But the thing is, it was still in the garage. It was still in the garage taken apart. Like you couldn't drive it to a mechanic or something. He had no real alternative other than to like figure out how to do it. So that experience, that story, that anecdote to me was very, I don't know, I connected with that anecdote a lot, because it was like, well, I mean, I could be depressed and I can like just give up. But the thing is, like, if I give up, I'm still in the garage. Like I still, like I if I give up, I am just stuck within this like shell of like limiting factors that is around me.
Yeah.
Like the only way to get out is to just keep pounding away at it until I can get away,
Find that tool to loosen that bolt.
Yeah, you gotta loosen that bolt. So that was, so like I never felt totally despondent about it, because I always felt like there was always something else I could strive for that I can do. It would be like the first thing, like first I'm gonna get to the point where, like, okay, so a lot of it was like the stages were determined by the limitations that were put on me as inpatient rehab resident. So when I first came in, when you first come into inpatient rehab, you're initially like you're buckled into the bed at night, like with a buckle that you can't undo. Someone has to come in and get you out to be able to get out of bed and like get in the wheelchair and roll around. So
Because they were afraid if you fell and
Yeah.
hit your head, game's over.
right, yeah. So there'd be something like that. So eventually I'd be like, well, I mean, I could work toward like getting to the point where I'm steady enough so that they feel comfortable not bolting me in the bed at night. So then I just pounded away at that and like, did that worked on my like exercises and my balance. Well, I guess balance exercises. Anyway, I work on the strength and balance and that kind of thing until they eventually were like, oh, we can trust you to the point that we can now we don't have to bolt you in the bed at night. So be like, oh, great, win. The next, then the next stage likes to get to the point when they don't have to bolt you into the wheelchair. So that's another stage. And then and then there's, I mean, beyond that, then there's like the next stage, which is being able to go to the bathroom on your own, which is like a huge kind of leap forward. And, you work toward that. And then anyway, there were these kind of bite-sized pieces that I could break off and work toward. And
Baby step, get out of the bed. Baby step, get out of the wheelchair.
Right.
Baby step, go to the bathroom.
Baby step, go to the bathroom.
Your
Baby step,
step.
walk around the
Yeah.
floor.
Baby
Walk
step, eat
up.
sushi with chopsticks.
We eat sushi with chopsticks. That was a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a structure kind of built into the whole experience of inpatient rehab that kind of facilitated, working toward these different goals. Or I saw them like very naturally converging, where it was just like naturally, I'm going to try to get the next stage. So, that was good. I mean, sorry. I feel like that's a very underwhelming answer to that, but
Will you tell Dr. O'Neill in the back of your head to shut the fuck up?
no, I know. Fuck you, Dr. O'Neill. Yeah. So, yeah, when I got back from, but in a lot of ways, I kind of miss, certain aspects of inpatient rehab. At least I miss being at that stage of the recovery process where the goals were very clear and ultimately like very achievable.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, they were, where it was like, go to the bathroom on your own. I can do that. I can figure out how to pee on my own. I can figure out how to get in and out of the wheelchair on my own. I can figure out how to walk on my own. But then there were like higher level exercises or activities that I'm still kind of struggling with. So like an example of that would be like running. Like there's something where I can only really keep up a run. I can only run for like not even a block. It's like half a block because like my leg, my toes start scraping on the ground and I end up
so it's a coordination, like muscle memory thing.
Yeah, it's a coordination, but it's also like I think it's a combination of coordination and strength. So like you need to have the strength to lift up, as you're running. There's a lot of coordination with, obviously with going heel toe and like pushing up on the calf and for each stride. But then also there's an aspect of like the strength to be able to lift up your legs, high enough as you run. And like generally I don't think that a lot of people have. Like, I think that when people get fatigued when they're running, especially like 35 year olds, when they get fatigued while they're running, it generally tends to be like their lungs and their heart that tire out, not necessarily their legs. So it's kind of a different animal for me.
So is that the sort of thing that could be like those small achievable goals where you're like, all right, I'm gonna know where I can run a block and a half or 2 blocks or something like that?
Yeah,
Or is that even something incremental like that is harder to achieve at this point?
it is, but only because like it is more difficult to achieve. But I think that a big part of it is just the lack of structure around that. Like when you're in inpatient rehab and you're trying to do something like run,
Yeah.
people are like, everyone's like trying to cheer you on, and everyone understands like everyone's trying to do this thing and he's struggling with that thing, but like it's acceptable to struggle with that thing, like in this context. And like
Yeah.
it's not like I think that people wouldn't accept that now, but being just among my age demographic peers,
Mhm.
it kind of I mean it's kind of weird to have somebody like a guy, to like see a guy that can only run like 15 strides and then like has to slow down and walk, and 15 strides and then slow down and walk, and then just like that experience, and then like ultimately only ends up running like 2 blocks,
Yeah.
is like that's kind of, I mean, it's kind of weird. And I'm sure that people would be accepting, but I feel like it is totally internal, and
Yeah.
it's not, it is me that's not like focusing enough to strive to, okay, now I'm gonna run half a block and then a block and then 2 blocks and get back up to actually being able to do it. Also, the fact is, like, I don't really care about running. I mean, it's not like I mean, it's a means to an end. I'm not a huge fan of running. It is a nice, convenient form of exercise. You get to, and it's very cheap.
But what I'm hearing you say, Jake, is, and I keep thinking about this as I'm listening to your experience. There are so many things that I just take for granted in my life, right? And that you had to like completely reboot and start over again. And these things that normally we would take for granted that are more of a struggle for you at this point, that can be really discouraging as you're comparing yourself to other people in your age group that haven't gone through what you've been through and where they are, and that seems rough.
Yeah, it's yeah, that is a huge part of it. I mean, and just figuring out how to interact with people of my age demographic and like age and educational peers. It may, just my in life right now, it's just like difficult because for whatever reason I ended up with like friends that, like neighborhood friends that all of whom are like involved in like some sort of casual extreme fitness.
Casual extreme fitness.
And like they're like, well, I mean, I ran the half Ironman, and I think it was 2 months ago I did the half Ironman, but my personal trainer, I was really trying to do those 100 burpees, but I was struggling a little bit with it. Well, I mean, I can run like I can run like 25 feet. I mean, like, what am I going to talk about? Like this whole thing where like people are we're so not on the same level.
You know what I hope this isn't insensitive. I can tend to get a little insensitive without meaning to be insensitive. But I remember, Jake, one of the episodes that you were really interested in recording before this happened was the concept of masculinity. And not
Oh,
just
right,
like
yeah.
masculinity in Mormon culture, but masculinity outside of Mormon culture. Like, what does it really mean to be a man? And so as I'm listening to you say this, I'm thinking about like these like casually extreme fitness neighbors that you're around. They're like, this is what it means to be a man, Jake. How many strides can you run? Is that still kind of like I'm trying to find myself? Where do I fit in? Where do I like, how do I value myself when these guys around me are running Ironman marathons?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, yes. I also will say, like, in their defense, they have been, first of all, like, extremely kind and giving and
Yeah.
so supportive. And like
Yeah.
a lot of them, I think a lot of them they'd give me like rides to outpatient rehab before I could drive, and like just these very giving people. And like they're super, they're very great. And also like they're not broy masculine guys. Like they're not like, they're not this kind of,
They didn't
gorilla ape kind of thing where they're like, oh yeah, let's be a man.
Yeah, like Tim Allen on whatever that show was.
Yeah, in the
Tool Time or something.
yeah. Oh yeah, Home Improvement.
Home Improvement. Yeah, that's it. Tool Time was the show within the show.
Right, Tool Time was
Yeah,
show. Yeah. So yeah, they're not like that. I think they're really great friends of mine, and I
Yeah.
appreciate all of them immensely.
Yeah.
But I've never really expressed this to them because, I mean, I don't want to make them, basically, I don't want to like taint the thing, like one of the things that they have in common with each other, by saying like, don't talk about the thing, don't talk
Yeah.
about fitness because
Right.
Jake feels sad about you talking about fitness.
Right.
Because he can't do any of these things. So I don't want to like rain on the parade of,
Yeah.
this chat about like fitness. It's just, and I don't like resent it necessarily, but I just don't have any interest in it. And like, I have like no interest in it, and I have like no real hope of like actually doing that, and like no desire to figure out how to do that.
Mm.
So,
for the last 2 years, I just recently changed my Facebook banner. But ever since your cardiac arrest from the last 2 years, like I had that picture of you standing up on top of the mountain with your back turned to the camera, like this victory pose. Did you know that? That was like my little tribute to you. It was like,
I
I'm
didn't
going
know
to
that. That's
conquer,
very
overcome.
nice.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we took that. I think we took that in Machu Picchu, like in
Yeah.
Peru.
Yeah, which you hiked up. You guys did like what, a 5-day hike? I remember when you came back from that, you had the insect bites just everywhere.
Yeah, right.
It was crazy.
I mean, that was a great hike, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah.
So those days are behind you. You're not.
I mean,
you're not aspiring to go back and hike up Machu Picchu. Maybe just take the train this time.
I would. I mean, hiking, I'm more into that idea. The more extreme fitnessy things, not so much.
Yeah.
So
let's get into some of these other questions about like how this experience has changed your view on things like life, God, religion, spirituality, family, things that you did before with Brother Jake or Infants on Thrones. Like when you look back at that person that you were before and the way that you approached life, where do you see the biggest differences? Where do you see things being similar?
yeah,
Say
like
about that, Jake.
so there are certain aspects of Infants on Thrones and Brother Jake that like I kind of feel, I mean, I have more mixed feelings about. So like,
yeah,
there's a certain amount of like, there's a certain amount of don't know, like hubris that I had in Brother Jake. Well, not necessarily in Brother Jake. The thing is, with Brother Jake, I'm pretty damn proud of the whole thing. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
thing is like, they're really great. They're super informative. They're, I mean,
They're
content
awesome.
wise, I
Yeah.
would say 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
great.
Hi, I'm Brother Jake. Now, there are a lot of people out there who think that Mormonism is some sort of super scary cult, but they couldn't be more wrong. Let me explain. But first of all, let's talk about the word cult. According to the dictionary definition, a cult is a system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. So, according to that definition, every freaking religion is a cult. So, no big deal. Problem solved. Okay, fine. I may be ignoring the secondary, more popular definition of the word cult that people might be using when they say Mormonism is a cult, which would be something like a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. But Mormonism isn't like, a cult either, because we don't even exhibit any of the signs of being a cult, like having a whitewashed version of the religion's origin story and history, or being founded by a charismatic leader who's since been almost deified, or participating in secretive rituals, or having an organized high-pressure recruitment force, or actively discouraging people from questioning the dogmas of the organization and marginalizing people who have doubts. You know what? Why don't we take these one at a time? Sign 1. A whitewashed version of the religion's history. Mormonism doesn't do this at all. We've always been totally transparent about our history. I mean, sure, the way we portray some things might seem a little, different than what sort of appeared to have happened according to the historical record. Like, for example, the fact that all the depictions of the translation of the Book of Mormon published in church materials depict something like this, or this, or this, when, according to eyewitnesses, it was more like this, or, well, just that. Or the fact that we often hear things like this in reference to Joseph Smith's incarcerations preceding his martyrdom.
He had been issued an arrest warrant on trumped-up charges.
When, in fact, he had been arrested for ordering the destruction of a printing press that had printed unfavorable things about him. But there's nothing sinister about, selectively de-emphasizing stuff in the past. We're just putting our best foot forward. Now, there might be some people that say, but deliberately adjusting historical details to make it easier for people to believe your claims is pretty much the exact definition of whitewashing. But I mean, pretty much every religion has weird stuff in their past, so it's not like we're the only ones doing it. I mean, what do you expect us to do? It's not like when you go on a date, you immediately mention the fact that you still live with your mom, because maybe right after you order, she'll go to the bathroom and then never come back, so then you have to call your mom for a ride home and then start a 3-day Star Trek marathon. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, whitewashing is super bad and you shouldn't do it, but it's not really like a bad thing to strategically present certain information in a certain way if doing so ends up helping people out, right? So, since we're trying to help people have faith in God's true church so they can be with their families after they die, and learning certain details about the way things seem to have happened might make it harder to believe, then omitting those details from the narrative really isn't whitewashing, it's just helping people have faith so they can get into super awesome VIP heaven later on. And how can that be a bad thing? Sign 2. A charismatic, deified leader. Okay, fine. I'm not going to deny that Joseph Smith had some public speaking and interpersonal skills, but is there anything really wrong with that? I mean, doesn't it kind of make sense that God would choose somebody with leadership to lead his church? Besides, it's not like Joseph Smith ever abused his influence. I mean, yeah, there was this one time when he sent a man away on a proselytizing mission and then married his wife while he was away. And sure, there was this other time when he kind of encouraged a practically 15-year-old girl to marry him by telling her an angel was going to kill him if she didn't. But, that was way back in the 1800s. It was a different time back then. There was no way to know what people were thinking. Besides, we don't even know if these marriages included, sex. Plus, both those people wrote in their diary way after the fact that they were cool with it. So, give Joseph Smith a break. I bet he didn't even want to do it. He was just trying to follow God's commandments. I mean, can you imagine an angel with a sword? I think we're getting off topic. My point is, sure, Joseph Smith may have been a charismatic guy, but we definitely don't think he's like a god or anything. I mean, yeah, we do have kind of a lot of Sunday school lessons about how awesome he was, and held a big celebratory event on his 200th birthday that was broadcast all over the world, and have a chapter in our scriptures that talk about how he was only a tiny bit less awesome than Jesus, and have a hymn specifically singing his praises. And sure, I guess you could say that incorporating things centered around mortal individuals into hallmarks of worship that are otherwise reserved only for the divine, like hymns and scriptures, might implicitly elevate that individual to some sort of demigod status and is pretty close to the definition of deification. But what we're doing is totally different. We're not worshiping him. Worship is when you go through religious rites to show reverence and adoration for something. We're just demonstrating honor and respect by singing hymns and scriptures specifically about him. That's all. Sign 3. Participation in secretive rituals. Okay, fine. I guess we do technically have a set of ordinances that are performed in our super special temples. And yeah, it's true that you're not allowed inside unless you have a temple recommend. And sure, we're kind of explicitly forbidden from talking about what exactly goes on in there in pretty much any detail whatsoever. But even though what I just described is basically the exact definition of a secret, that doesn't mean that it's a secret. It's just sacred. You see, what goes on inside a temple is so special that if we let other people see it, they might make fun of it, which would be a huge bummer for us. Plus, since the temple stuff is so super sacred, God would be that much more PO'd at you if you did end up making fun of it and would probably bust out some really hardcore punishments that would, ruin your life or whatever. So us not telling you what goes on in the temples is really for your benefit if you think about it. We're just trying to protect you from getting, zapped. But that doesn't mean you can never learn about what goes on in the temple. Anyone can go in. They just have to earn a temple recommend by doing all the things that God wants, like going to church every Sunday and believing that Joseph Smith is a prophet and that this is the one true church of God and getting baptized and getting the Holy Ghost and not drinking coffee or tea or booze and not having, except with your spouse and paying all the tithing you're supposed to. So you see, it's not like we're secretive, more like sacretive. Sign 4. An organized high-pressure recruitment force. Mormons don't do this at all. I mean, sure, I guess you could say that the church's force of 80,000 full-time missionaries kind of fits that description, especially since as part of their 2-year service, missionaries are sent to a training facility where they're instructed on how to preach about Mormonism using techniques that closely mirror high-pressure sales strategies. And yeah, I guess you could also say that having the church's PR department produce a documentary for theatrical release about how cool and interesting and diverse our membership is, and then have an apostle explicitly encourage members to attend and share the movie with friends and family to ensure its box office success kind of falls under the definition of high-pressure recruitment too, but it's like this. Imagine you, found a big tree in the middle of a huge field with the most delicious fruit you could ever imagine, just mind-blowingly good fruit. Wouldn't you want to take that super awesome fruit and share it with all your friends and family? That's what we're doing. So when we do stuff like make a self-promotional documentary with a deliberately positive spin or train missionaries to follow sales-inspired commitment patterns to get people to agree to baptism, you gotta understand that it's not like we're trying to trick people or anything. We just know that being Mormon is way more awesome than not being Mormon, and we just want to share that with as many people as possible. We just want to share the fruit, man. Sign 5. Actively discouraging doubt and marginalizing people who leave the faith. Now, this one just isn't true at all. Mormonism started because Joseph Smith was willing to doubt the status quo and wanted to find real answers. That's what the first vision was all about. Well, one of the accounts of the first vision anyway. But there's a difference between asking questions and questioning. Asking questions is great. It's how we progress. So when we ask questions like, how can I have greater faith in Jesus? Or how can I know the church is even more true? It opens us up to learn and grow. But when you start questioning, then you might start thinking about things outside the premise that the church and gospel are true and super awesome, and that can cause doubts, which can eventually do apostasy, which means you don't get into super awesome VIP heaven, so it's better not to go down that way. It's like this.
President Thomas S. Monson has counseled us that faith and doubt cannot exist in the same mind at the same time, for one will dispel the other.
Right. Doubt and faith are mutually exclusive. I mean, sure, saying that might seem a little counterintuitive since faith is the evidence of things hoped for but not seen, so it seems like some uncertainty must exist since otherwise it wouldn't be faith as much as knowledge. But, I think the larger point is this.
Doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith.
Exactly. We should doubt our doubts before doubting anything else. That way faith will replace the doubt until we don't have any doubts at all. Except for the doubts we had about our doubts, but those doubts are okay since doubt is bad and faith is good. Except for if you have faith in your doubts, that's bad. Well, it's not bad if your faith is in the doubts of your doubts. It's just bad if you have faith in the doubts that you had about your faith. Does that make sense? Anyway, the point is that even if we do encourage faith and discourage doubts, that doesn't mean that we treat people who leave the faith poorly or think less of them. I mean, granted, it is a little hard to argue that we don't stigmatize those people when we have church leaders getting up in our super cool semi-annual conference meetings and saying things like this.
Studying the church through the eyes of its defectors, Elder Neil A. Maxwell once said, is like interviewing Judas to understand Jesus.
Or this.
One loses his testimony only by listening to the promptings of the evil one. And Satan's goal is not complete when a person leaves the church, but when he comes out in open rebellion against it.
since by implying that people who leave the church are similar to one of the Bible's most notorious bad guys or an unwitting tool of the devil, we're kind of reinforcing an image that might create a rift of distrust and ostracism between the people who leave and their still believing friends and family, but we only say that because we love them. We love them so much that it makes us really sad that they're going to miss out on all the cool stuff that we'll be getting in Super Awesome VIP heaven. We just feel really sorry for them in a totally not self-righteous or condescending kind of way at all. That's it. In the end, sure, I guess there are some typical hallmarks of a cult that Mormonism can kind of seem to display, but the real test of whether Mormonism is a cult is this. By their fruits ye shall know them, which means that what something produces is a reflection of what it is. So if cults are bad and Mormonism is a cult, then Mormons would be bad people. But since Mormons are super cool and diverse and awesome and people that are great neighbors that love their families, which you can see in the documentary that we just made about ourselves, then Mormonism can't be bad, which means that it can't be a cult because cults are bad. And yes, that line of logic might seem a bit myopic and more than a bit simplistic, but it's something Jesus said. So, what are you going to do? So you see, not a cult.
There is a certain amount of hubris around like my approach to some of those things that is a little bit, I kind of feel a little sheepish about. Like I don't know.
When you say hubris, you mean like being dismissive to believers and that makes you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, like dismissive to believers, and the way that I would put, like, I mean, their snark, like, baked. I mean, obviously, like, the entire frame of Brother Jake is, like, cocooned in this, like, lens of snarkiness, but there's a certain amount of, like, undue hostility that I'd put into it that wasn't as... It certainly wasn't like charitable toward their point of view. And I do have some regrets around that. Like, and that, I mean, that is kind of correlated with Infants on Thrones a little bit to the point where I feel like I would kind of take off the kid gloves and in Infants on Thrones and like have no holds barred, like shitting on that I wrote about somebody that complained about something we did.
Oh yeah, there was.
It's just like stuff like that where it'd be like, ooh, I kind of cringe about that.
Yeah,
where it'd be like, I feel bad about being such like being so openly hostile toward people. It just.
Do you want me to insert that clip here, or do you want me to just delete it from the catalog completely?
No, the thing is, it's actually pretty catchy. It's just like ultimately, I feel bad about doing it, but it's pretty catchy. It's just.
But it was also funny because that guy, like, I think he went after Erica or he went after somebody, and so you're like, you know what? I'm going to stand up for this person that I care about. You go fuck yourself. You can take that like snarky opinion, so you're like playfully throwing it back in his face. I'm going to defend you, Jake, on that one. Cause I do remember that one.
Well, like, okay, here's the deal, the dealio. Sometimes we get feedback from time to time that, it just like requires a specific response. Like this email that we got from, we'll call him Mr. Reed. So let's just share the email with you. Here it is, read to you by none other than Sister Brother Jake herself, Erica Jake. Take it away, Erica.
Hello, folks. I recently discovered your podcast while searching Mormon on Stitcher. I've also been listening to Mormon Expositor and Mormon Matters. I have enjoyed the past 6 episodes of Infants on Thrones, and just today listened to the essay by Jill Searle and the subsequent discussion. As a disaffected Mormon of the past 8 years and a previously active member with over 40 years of leadership experience, I have been able to relate with much of the subject matter, attitudes, and individual histories of your panel members. I was surprised to hear of one of your panelists, I cannot recall which one, today state that he is an attorney. The reason for my surprise is also the reason I am writing you today, and my observations and comments are expressed in the hope that they will be regarded with the respect that I and other listeners should have for each of you in your intent, and in the anticipation that some small improvements will help make your podcast even more interesting and helpful to your audience. The constant use of the words like, I mean, and by the panelists in virtually every sentence is not contributory to the fluent and articulate conveyance of thought, and after just a few minutes actually becomes annoying to the listener. On the other hand, and as a good comparison, Miss Searle's comments avoided those colloquialisms, as she was exceptionally articulate. I was particularly disturbed by Erica's sound quality in comments. She must have been seated back from her mic or in an environment that was acoustically poor because she had tunnel voice with the background echo. But most bothersome from a listener's perspective was that she had considerable difficulty completing a fluid sentence and was the panelist with the most frequent misuse of the colloquialisms mentioned above. Perhaps your review of the interview with Miss Searle and a few of those prior will bear out what I am explaining. Maybe none of this is of any concern to you, and if that's the case, I have at least expressed my thoughts. On the other hand, if the quality and professionalism of your podcast is of concern, together with the impact it may have on your listeners, then I would invite you to give credence to my comments. Thank you for your time today, and for your efforts to provide helpful information to those transitioning through what may be difficult times in their life. Sincerely, Mr. Reed.
Salutations, Mr. Reed. It is my pleasure, yes indeed, to address your apt concerns and perhaps our case to plead. Since it's hard for you to hear the vulgar speech of lower tier, I hope this Robert Frost impression will protect your tender ear. Which brings us to your larger point. When we with filler words our speech anoint, it grates upon the listener's minds and makes our very thoughts disjoint. We are sorry that our conversation is no wellspring of articulation, that in fleshing out our thoughts we use like and on occasion. But give us a break, this shit ain't scripted, and some, like me, aren't super gifted at producing perfect oral points when through our thoughts on air we've sifted. I get it, man, I really do. It's bad to let those words accrue. But in reading through your message past, we infants learn something about you. It's sad for us to see, alas, that perhaps due to your long Mormon past, although you've left the church behind, you're still a condescending ass. So, in closing, we should let you know we probably will not change our flow, so if you cannot handle ums and likes, then this may not be your medium, bro. Might I suggest birdwatching? Cheerio, Jake.
I honestly don't remember any of the context around it, so like that might be.
Yeah. You were coming to the defense. I think it was Erica, or it was either Erica or it was Heather. It was somebody that you were coming to the defense of, and so I think it was warranted. But I remember when we did I think it was one of our first Smackdowns of the Book of Abraham article, like the LDS.org essays on the Book of Abraham. And just you were unhinged on that one. That was the first one where, like, I remember afterwards you're like, I'm not really happy with how I was on that one.
Yeah, I was like, some second thoughts around that. Like it's and so like those that aspect of the Brother Jake persona and kind of the gleefully kind of triggering, like gleefully pushing on people's nerves, that I also feel kind of, that I do feel kind of bad. I do feel bad about. Also, like, there was one episode of It's on Thrones that I am, genuinely, unabashedly ashamed of. The whole episode, the context of the episode, the reason for the episode, the whole endeavor was like just so sophomoric and so adolescent. It was, I'm not just talking about Infants on Thrones in general. It was the Infants on Thrones episode they had about swearing. That we were like, oh, what's the best cuss word that you like? Do you like poo-poo face or fart mouth? And like we were just talking about like, oh, I love the word fuck and shit and bullshit. And I'm like, oh my god, like I think about that. I don't want to go back and listen to it. I don't want to. Like it's just there's nothing. There's no aspect of.
You said ass.
Like there's no dignity. Like, there's no dignity, in a bunch of 20, like,
You were in your 20s. We were in our 30s and 40s.
yeah, 20s, 30s, 40s, adults,
Yeah.
adult men, like
Adult
talking about their
infants.
favorite cuss words.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, that's some real like 13-year-old stuff.
Yeah.
So I am no asterisk, no qualifying phrase ashamed of that one. But I mean, I don't know. Like, in terms of my views on God, I'm actually surprised that it didn't really change.
Yeah.
I mean, because you'd think that it would. I mean, I'd honestly think that it never really even occurred to me as even like an avenue of thought.
Mm.
Like, I never even really thought about, like, contemplated the idea of, like, maybe there's a reason for all of this other than, like, statistical improbability.
So
I mean,
is that your position, statistical improbability?
Yeah, like, I mean, if anything, it has completely reinforced the idea of, like, that life is just a sequence of random events, and some of which are improbable, but like that is the nature of improbable events, is that they don't really happen very often. And they have, like, a very improbable event happened to happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. Like, it's a very kind of nice, I mean, in a lot of ways, like, I just found more comfort in that idea.
Mm.
That there was no, I hadn't been smitten, I hadn't been chosen, I had just been unlucky simultaneously, unlucky and lucky, just in quick succession.
Yeah.
It was like I, got my hand cut off and fell down the pit, but then I fell into a tube and, like, I ended up on the Millennium Falcon, and it's like, what are the odds?
So you're saying you believe in the Force, but you don't believe in God.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I suppose that is an interpretation of it.
How did I remember some kind of story about when you were still in recovery and you had different family members that were flying out to be with you, and you also had this outpouring of love from, like, the ex-Mormon community with the GoFundMe page and, like, the messages that they were writing you during that time, that some of your family members looked at that and it kind of changed the way that they thought of you or what your role had been, or even, like, ex-Mormons in general. Am I remembering that right?
Right. Yes. Yeah, that's true. That was especially true with my brother Joel. So, like, so based on his I mean, he read through this when I was at Duke. So, like, I obviously had no memory of him, like, reading through these things, but he
reading through the comments on the GoFundMe
reads
page,
the comments of the
Yeah.
the GoFundMe page and that kind of thing is well, first of all, I want to say that, like, all of anybody who, like, reached, there were so many people that were so generous with their resources and, like, contributing money to the GoFundMe thing, and to, like, the whole GoFundMe project, and, like, this just the outpouring of, like, love, and not only just love, like, like, material support as a result of this whole experience has been, just so completely overwhelming. And I want to thank everybody that, I appreciated the thoughts and people reaching out to me and the affection, because, like, I will say that that really does have value, even if it's not necessarily, like, material value, like, not, objective value or something, but subjectively, like, it's very valuable to like have people reach out and, you know, express their support, and that matters. And that has, like, I appreciate that more now than I did before.
Yeah.
Just the intangible value of like support and friendship and community.
Yeah. Let me just add to that, Jake, because my sense of you, and I think it still is this way in some degree, but I want to get your feedback, that you're really uncomfortable when people express appreciation for you, like admiration for you, because you don't want it to go to your head. You don't ever want to be like cocky about stuff. You want to be humble. You don't want to go into hubris. And so it's kind of hard for you to accept when people are putting praise on you. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. I mean, I do certainly feel uncomfortable with like people, especially like people saying, you know, that they admire XYZ, you know, XYZ thing that I did to my face. It's just like that. I don't know what to do with that. Like, I don't know what, because I mean, the only way, I don't know what to do with it other than like either absorb it and become like this pompous asshole, or not absorb it, or like find some way to deflect it, which makes it seem like I don't like genuinely appreciate what they just said. And I do. You know, I really do enjoy. I mean, I love that people liked that people, you know,
loved,
value, and like loved Brother Jake
and
like
Carl the Casual Satanist.
Yeah.
Just like all of those fun little quirky things that you bring.
Like, and I love that people enjoyed it because I love doing it too.
Yeah.
And so like I got to do a good thing. I got to do a thing that I liked, and you got to like it too.
Yeah.
So like now we both are having fun with this thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're having fun watching and listening to this thing. I had fun making it, and it's just like we're having a good time together. And like, that's really what I should say. That's what I should say. That's actually a pretty good thing to say. I had a great time making it. That was so much fun. I'm so glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Because I loved making it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
so I kind of derailed you because we were talking about Joel's reaction to those comments.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of wanted to take like an aside just to say, like, first of all, like, I am so grateful for like the outpouring of love and support and resources that came my way. I also want to say that like we ended up like not needing a lot of the money that people sent us, because the recovery was very miraculous and very it was very unexpected and very positive. So what we ended up doing with it is we donated it. We donated the extra money that we got from the GoFundMe. We donated it part of it to the Duke Hospital Cardiological Association, part of it to the Shepherd Center, and then part of it to I forget the name of the group, but basically it's like an economic restoration group.
Yeah.
But we
so you paid it forward.
I mean, the economic restoration stuff was really just to placate our guilt for like so many one-use plastic shit that we had contributed. So like I, like on my own, I am accountable for just hundreds of milligrams of microplastics in the ocean today. And I do feel bad about that, but I'm sorry about it. But yeah, so we ended up like donating the extra funds that we got, like the funds that we got beyond our needs, to those three different organizations to kind of pay forward. But yeah, so my brother Joel, who is, I mean, he's a really funny guy. He is a really, really funny guy. And he wrote a bunch of the Caring Bridge updates. And they were fantastic. I mean, it's a really, really great sense of humor, and like we get along really well. But he really didn't like Brother Jake. I mean, he just really did not appreciate the snarkiness, and like he thought, it was just taking pot shots at something that he held sacred, and it was just something where like he took it personally in kind of the worst ways that one that, I mean, the way that you really hope that they don't take it, that's the way he took it. So it was something where and I, was disappointed when that happened, because like I really wanted him to appreciate the humor of it, and kind of see the art behind, what I was doing, and appreciate that aspect of it. But I mean, ultimately he felt more offended by it than enamored by, the cleverness of it. So I always was disappointed by the fact that like he didn't really take it very well, and it kind of bummed me out. I was like, well, I mean, and we didn't really talk about it because, it was something where I was like, well, I mean, what are you going to talk about? Let's talk about other things. We have plenty of other things we can talk about and, bond over, and it'll be fine. But he ended up like his mentality around the Brother Jake persona, and like that the Brother Jake persona, and like the endeavor to like upload these videos and animate this stuff, and kind of create these narratives and whatever, like doing this creative stuff.
Creative stuff that showed how stupid a lot of these really sacred things were.
Yeah, it's true. But he could kind of see the sincerity in the appreciation from the ex-Marine community, kind of showed him that like people really did feel materially like that I had done something to alleviate some of the angst that they may have, and some of the tension, the inner turmoil they may be going through. And he may disagree with the reasons for the turmoil, or like the interpretation of that stuff, but you couldn't deny that people were sincerely grateful to me for giving voice to some aspect of their experience. And seeing that sincerity at my most vulnerable, and their generosity when I was vulnerable, really helped in kind of cementing the fact that like, no, this isn't like, yes, this does seem like there is a certain aspect of this is just like basic jackassery, but there's more beneath. Like there is a kind and sincere core underneath that. That is he's really speaking to, and that, I mean, that's sincere and should be appreciated. So,
well, I'm glad he was able to see that. Without having experienced cardiac arrest and the recovery that you have, I also look back on some Infants episodes with regret, and like not really proud of promoting a certain way of viewing people as being stupid or ridiculous. But like, I understand, I think, the way that I see it. I'm not going to say this is how it is. I'm just going to say this is how I see it. That when there are certain ideas that are so core to your identity, and you're just so enmeshed with these things, that in order to gain some kind of liberation from them, having humor, sarcasm, like sarcasm literally means ripping the flesh off of something. That's the Greek word for sarcasm. I mean, you are extracting this entity from your soul, metaphorically speaking, of Mormonism, and the hold that it has on who you are. And you're like, no, I want to be an individual. I don't want to be so entangled with this. And that I see what you did with Brother Jake, what we've done with Infants on Thrones, as being a way of allowing humor to create distance, like an emotional distance from something that was really close. And if somebody doesn't want to have that distance, it's very threatening. You don't appreciate it. You just see it as jackassery and just like making fun of sacred things. But for the people who found it liberating, and it really is like a healing balm kind of thing to take this thing out and be able to laugh at it and go, oh, I don't have to take this thing so seriously anymore. I'm not going to hell. I'm not going to have, like the eternity is spent in outer darkness while everybody else progresses to the highest degree of the celestial care, whatever these things are. You can kind of laugh at that. And anyway, I don't know that he would ever see it that way, but
yeah,
I do.
Who knows? Like do
you see it that way, or do you not? Is that just me? This is just my way of seeing things, or what do you think?
No, I totally. I mean, I think that you articulated perfectly, like the value that, like what I was trying to do in the course of Brother Jake, what I was trying to do in the course of Infants on Thrones was like create that space, and extract, kind of deconstruct Mormonism from deconstruct like the intermingled aspects of Mormonism from myself.
Yeah.
So like, and like as I broke it out, like, whatever. So I totally agree with that assessment of it. I would say that, yeah. I just had like a random, I mean, it's not like a random memory, but this is another kind of bittersweet kind of memory around Infants, was the conference episodes, which I felt like were so great.
Oh, geez.
And I feel like they were really fun. They were a ton of fun to make, ton of fun, like write and perform, but like ultimately it was just like so freaking mean. I mean,
no. The one that you did about the two women together and how that works, I simply cannot fathom, or whatever it was you said.
Right. Yes, right.
My dear brothers and sisters, it was my great privilege recently to attend a gathering of religious leaders about marriage and family. There were representatives from many different faiths that attended, but I was amazed by how much we, a group of high-ranking leaders of conservative religions, happened to agree about how traditional marriage should be. Witnessing this was a marvelous work and a wonder. In talking about traditional marriage, you may wonder about which aspect of traditional marriage we decided to focus on. In other words, what makes traditional marriage traditional? Is it the tradition to marry for love rather than the earlier non-traditional tradition of marrying for political or economic reasons? Or is it the tradition of promising lifelong fidelity to one another? Or is it the tradition of pledging to share one's life with another through thick and thin and support one's children or dependents? Well, no. While all those things are good, those things aren't the things that make a marriage traditional. No, the key element of marriage is something shown in the story of the first two humans ever, Adam and Eve, whom our dear Elder Holland, who is not a dodo and went to a pretty good school, has already told us were definitely literally real people and definitely fell from a really real Garden of Eden, despite how empirically improbable that may sound. You see, what makes a traditional marriage so traditional is the physical anatomy of the people in it, namely the number of penises and vaginas. As God's mouthpiece on earth, it is our solemn duty to affirm that a traditional marriage contains one penis and one vagina. Well, except for very special occasions when the Lord has seen fit to allow marriages to have one penis and more than one vagina, as he did with Abraham and the early saints, but this only happens in extreme circumstances. However, in these troubled times, there are those who argue that a marriage can have two penises, or, I'm told, two vaginas with no penis at all, which baffles me to no end. But in that religious summit we attended, we bore powerful testimony that traditional marriage must have one, but sometimes more vaginas, and one, and only one, penis. You may wonder why we have decided to reduce the definition of traditional marriage to this one simplistic feature, since the thing that makes a marriage and family so influential in people's lives isn't so much the anatomy of the adherents, but the network of unconditional love, support, and inclusion that it provides. Indeed, you might think that if we were truly concerned with promoting the benefits of marriage and family, we would embrace all forms of marriage as traditional, so long as it meets the criteria of consent, love, and fidelity that we expect. But we must stand against such perversions of traditional marriage. In the face of this argument, we declare to the world that the balance of penises and vaginas in any given marriage is sanctioned by God and cannot be changed. And anyone whose arrangement eschews this balance can only attain a counterfeit of the emotional and sociological benefits of marriage and family. Those who fight against this holy balance have powerful tools in the media and the internet to make it seem like there are a lot of them. However, I am pleased to say that these people who argue for the acceptance of marriages with too many penises or not enough penises are actually in the minority. And by pointing that out, I'm implying that their opinions are, for some reason, less important. Now, that may seem like a strange position to take, since the minority status of our own members was exploited for persecution less than 200 years ago. But we should all remember that mob rule really isn't so bad if you're part of the mob. Now, since such a diverse crowd of conservative religious leaders were able to reach such a consensus about the correct number of penises and vaginas in a traditional marriage, you may wonder, what makes us so special? How can I hold on to that sense of superiority and one true churchedness that I've grown to rely on? But don't worry. Even though these good people could recognize real traditional marriage, they still don't have the eternal families like us. Yes, rest assured that through our holy temples, we don't have to be separated from our families in heaven. And sure, that might seem like solving a problem we created in the first place, since most Christians believe they'll be with their families in heaven anyway. But we can take comfort in the fact that our penile and vaginally balanced marriages will last into the eternities, while theirs dissolve with death. In the name of heteronormativity, amen.
Powerful.
Powerful. Oh, Jake.
But I mean, the thing is, I don't feel like bad necessarily about it because they're so freaking good, but also like kind of feel bad about it.
No, and to your credit, man, whenever there was a good conference talk, like you were the first one to go, hey, let me put this guy up on my shoulders and say, I really appreciate, like, there's nothing I can make fun of this one. And I don't remember, it was some guy from Europe.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
And you did that a couple of times with things. You're like, I'm gonna give them their due when I can give them their due. And that was part of your own growing and maturing process too, Jake Frost.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't just pick the low-hanging fruit necessarily to like.
Started off as infants and we ended off as infants.
Yeah, it's true. We were embryos on thrones.
Gross embryos.
Back then.
Yeah.
No, we're infants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, I like looking forward to the future. Well, I don't know. You didn't really ask about that. So.
Hey, what does the future hold for Jake Frost?
I don't know,
Okay.
but I am not. I mean, I kind of feel like, I'm being in that kind of fourth stage of recovery, of like the long tail end of the recovery arc.
Yeah.
Is it's difficult. I mean, it just feels like, I don't know, it kind of feels like the end of Castaway, you know, where like Tom Hanks comes back and like he like struggles to like build this boat, and he loses Wilson, and you know, he survives out in the water for a long time, and then like eventually is, you know, and then like it's eventually picked up by a fishing boat or something, and like anyway, so like at the end of Castaway, he's just kind of sitting in his apartment, and you know, he's like, he picks up the lighter and just like lights it, you know, it's kind of marveling at, and like flips on light switches and stuff, just marveling at the convenience of like everyday life, you know, that he took for granted.
Yeah.
And now he took for granted at one point in his life, and like now has a newfound appreciation for. And then at the end, he, you know, drives back with the package and delivers it, and then he just kind of drives off down the road. I mean, he just kind of wanders. I mean, it actually, all the movie references are coming back to me now, but it's kind of like the end of Lord of the Rings, you know, when like Frodo goes back to the Shire. He's like, wow, I'm so glad we saved the Shire, you know, good, we're back to where we started. And then he's like, well, I don't know what I fucking do. Like, I'm just kind of looking for my, you know, what is he? He goes out west to the sea. He goes westward into the sea or something, and like sails with the elves. Like, I'm looking for my boat westward, and like trying to figure out. Like, now, I feel like being in that long tail end of recovery, it's kind of like, okay, I did a thing. I accomplished a Herculean, like difficult, like a task that seemed almost impossible to pull off. And like, I didn't do it by myself, you know, but I've now gone through that, all of those things. And like, I'm kind of back to the point where like things are as much back to normal as they can be for me in 2020, you know, in the middle of a pandemic, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I mean, whatever. What are you going to do? So, like, at this point, I'm like, crap. Like, okay, great. Like, my goal this entire time was just like, I want to get back to normal. I want to get back to working, you know, being able to like work full time and, you know, have like be able to like have gainful employment and operate autonomously as an individual, and you know, go on about my life. Okay, so like now I'm at that stage now, and I'm like now what, you know, like where's like what happens now? And I don't really know what that is. But the thing is, I do feel, I mean, it's probably not unlike, there are probably a whole lot of like 32-year-old guys out there that feel the same way I do, that just got like that. There's probably a whole bunch of like 32-year-old guys that are,
and maybe at least one 48-year-old guy.
Yeah, we're just like middle-aged guys, right? Like middle-aged guys all feel this way, where they, you know, they just want to get to the point. I just want to get through school and get a job in this new career, or get a new job in XYZ new thing. I just want to get to that. I want to get the training and then get a job and work in that job. And it's like, great, you're gonna do it. You're gonna accomplish all of your goals. You're gonna accomplish all of your dreams, you know, around that career change or whatever. But then you're not dead yet, you know.
So it's now what?
So it's like, now what?
Now what?
Now you. So I'm kind of in now what stage where like I feel a little bit like I guess there are certain things that like I have a casual interest in, like maybe I can dive into that a little bit more, like develop a new hobby or some shit like that. I don't know. Like I don't know. I honestly have no idea. I am happy to be I am happy to be, on the other side of Mordor, and I'm happy to be like having I'm happy to be in this situation. But like I I'm really happy that I'm not having to struggle with like going to the bathroom on my own anymore, or struggle with walking down the street anymore, or struggle with being able to drive to the grocery store or anything anymore. But I still, I'm feeling the same kind of existential angst that everyone else is. Like plenty of other middle-aged people are feeling.
Yeah.
So I guess there's some comfort, and like there's plenty of us. There's dozens of us. Yeah. Dozens.
But what are the things now that you live for, that you just like enjoy and love?
Enjoy and love. I do. I love creating like little Jesse Grams. I love creating those Jesse Grams and like coming up with fun games with Jesse, and then like turning that into like an audiovisual memoir of us doing that thing.
Where do you do Jesse? Because I don't see those anymore. You're making Jesse Grams?
Yeah, like I've been doing. So I'm pivoting toward. Did you not see the one where we were doing like Ultimate Wrestling?
No, is it because you're not really doing stuff on Facebook much anymore, right? Is it like Instagram?
Yeah, it's on Instagram.
Okay, I don't do Instagram, so that's why I'm missing you.
Well, I can.
You don't have to do that. Just
I can send you the videos.
I'd love to see them.
Yeah. So like there are a few videos that I've made since then where like now what Jesse's doing, and it's a ton of fun, is.
And is he 4?
He's 3.
He's
3.5.
3.5, yeah.
So I'm doing something where he is. So I'll have him watch a movie or retell like a common kind of bedtime story.
Yeah.
Like the story of the 3 little pigs.
Then hidden, a big bad wolf knocked at the door, said, "Let me come in, let me come in. Not by the hair of my chin. Then I will huff and puff and blow your house and but he couldn't."
And then I'll animate him retelling that story back to me.
Like Brother Jake style? Animated that way?
Yeah, animated that way.
Yeah.
So and it's fun. It's really fun to like see the way that he perceives, like how he attaches and like latches on to different characters in movies and like different characters and stories and stuff.
Oh my gosh, that's so. I would love to have stuff like that from me when I was 3.5. Like I've got one tape of me when I was 2 with my mom.
3 little pigs. A mad little pig. A mad little pig. Yeah, the bad wolf coming to get him. Come and get him? And did he get him? Uh-huh. He spiked them. Did he spike them? Yeah. What did he say when he knocked on the door? Little pig, let me come in. No. And I roll your house down. What song did they sing? I don't know.
Yeah. So like those are fun. Like creating audiovisual stuff is really like that. I don't know. That's I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
So that's a good time. I like doing that. It's fun. I like playing video games, which I mean, the thing is, it's whatever. I'm beyond being
ashamed of playing video games.
Ashamed of playing
Good.
video. Well, I am ashamed of playing video games. But the thing is, I'm not gonna deny it. I just do it, and it's fun, and I like doing it. I mean, this is a good time.
Yeah. Do you do like VR stuff, or what are your video games?
VR stuff is fun. It's just I don't have like I haven't invested money in like a VR kit, for
because the first time I ever did VR was from you when we were down in Mexico, and you had like that thing that you put on your eye.
Oh,
the phone you put on your eyes, and, like you're in the solar system.
Yeah,
and you could like go to the different planets and stuff. That was awesome.
That's a fun hobby, but it's not like creative, and I always feel guilty doing it because there's always guilt around. I don't know. I just feel guilty around about like not. It's doing a thing that like isn't creating anything. That for some reason that makes you feel guilty. I don't know.
So why don't you create like a near-death experience, and you can like totally make it up and write a book about an NDE and like meeting God and riding on the back of a butterfly and make just a shit ton of money doing that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you have to believe that. I mean, you don't have to believe it. You just have to portray belief in that thing all the time.
Wait, are you saying that a story like that cannot be faked?
It can be faked. You just have to be committed.
Okay.
Like you have to be committed 100% to like, I'm going to hang out with these boring ass people that like think this shit actually happened. Like you don't just get to be rich. You have to like get to be rich you have to become rich by going to a bunch of shitty conferences, like.
So that would be
like,
fun to you.
Speaking at like a convention or something of a bunch of religious assholes, and then like say, and then be like, well, I saw Jesus, and like, I don't know. It's just, the thing is, it can be done, and if I really wanted to make money, I would totally do that. There's no amount of money. There is no amount of money that is worth that shit.
Yeah. So that was my way of like asking you, do you get annoyed when people ask you if you had a near-death experience? And I think we just got the answer without me having to ask it that way.
I mean, I didn't really have a near-death experience. I had a post-death experience.
Right. Yeah.
Like it didn't. The thing is, that's what's crazy about cardiac arrest is you just die. That's it. You don't like. I feel like you don't. It's not like your heart is racing and then things start to fade and then you have this hallucinatory experience and fade out or something. It's just like, I don't remember. There was nothing. I remember that Thanksgiving. I remember the night before. And then I woke up like 6 weeks later and I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
I was like, get me out of this bed. It was.
So
like,
you didn't really have, you didn't have any context for when you went to bed and when you woke up. You didn't realize that like a month, was it a month and a half, basically?
Yeah, it was like 6. I mean, the thing is, and when I woke back up, like, that's not to say like I woke back up all at once. Basically, what happens was my brain swelled so much because it was totally shut off from oxygen.
Yeah.
So like it swelled so much that like it wasn't making any memories for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it started making memories, but like a little, like as the swelling gradually went down, it started to make memories slowly. But basically I didn't have like a waking up moment where I was like, oh, where am I? It was just like everything. I mean, it was like being reborn, like a baby is not like, I mean, they are kind of like that, but they don't have any context that they can react to. You know, like an infant when they're first born, they're looking surprised when they look around, and like as they start to speak, you know, they don't really know what's going on, but they're kind of catching up, or they're kind of cluing in to like what's going on a little bit. It's something where it's very much like my experience was. Well, this is all from like secondhand, like people telling me about it.
Yeah.
But my experience wasn't like, I didn't have like a moment where I woke up and like I had any concept, any kind of notion of who I was and like what had happened or anything like that. It just kind of like details about like what happened and who I was like kind of flowed in slowly.
So you kind of like gradually came online.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And you really can't remember back at this point any distinct time where you're like, okay, I'm back.
Yeah, right.
Like,
yeah, it wasn't like a turning the on switch back on.
Yeah.
It was like slowly powering back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it is a wild experience. I mean, just speaking about it now, it just is so bizarre.
Do you get tired of talking about it to people? Because I've held back.
Really,
I've held back. I haven't wanted to put like I wanted to have you on like 4 months after this happened. I'm like, you know,
I think that would have been a little soon. Like,
yeah.
I so the reason that would have been soon is because 4 months afterward, it would have been very much in the cloud of like self-doubt. And, you know, in just, I don't think I would have had any fun doing it 4 months ago, just because I would have been like, you know, second guessing myself the whole time and like double thinking everything and hesitating about like, oh, did I slur this word or that word? Or like, I could never get out of my own head enough to like actually like be part of this conversation. But I feel like now, I mean, I feel a little more loose.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of being able to kind of loosen up a little bit. So,
well, I enjoyed it. All right, so I'm going to wrap this one up. And any final words for Infants listeners?
Any final words for Infants listeners?
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I should say, like, I don't know. I don't want to like respond with levity, but also like, why? You know what? I'm just going to respond with sincerity because that's the way I feel. Like, I appreciate all of the affection and support that I got, both money-wise and also like in morale. All of that stuff mattered to me, and I appreciate all of it. And I feel really bad if I didn't like respond to an email or something. There were a lot of like emails and texts that I got in the Shepherd Center that I really just didn't have the capacity to deal with at the time. And they certainly have like fallen through the cracks, and I am so sorry about that. But I do appreciate all of the outpouring of affection and support, both material and otherwise. It all matters to me, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Put down the weapons that you use against yourself. You don't need them anymore. Lay down the weapons that you use against the world. We don't need another war. Put down the weapons that you use against yourself.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew. Ryan.
Carol.
Keith.
Ashley. And I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
My worst crime is an inside job. Dark thoughts taking over like an inside mob. I tune into the scene between the eyes and take a breath.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Throne.
I sit still and watch the thoughts float past me. Never mind the future, never mind what the past be. I like to jump and let the universe catch me. Free fall, watch the beauty blow past me. I keep my pockets light, destination in sight. Keep my actions elevated to compassionate heights. I'm walking past the fight, laying down on Sunday night. Choosing love when I pick up this mic. So we can make love, not war.
This is Infants on Thrones.
Minisode.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostlund, and I'm going to share with you a blog that I wrote back in October 2010. If you search for it, you can find it on the Mormon Expression blog site. This was an experience that I actually had in a priesthood elders quorum. Every once in a while, there is a lesson where they have to be very serious about the terrible problem of pornography. This was probably one of the most entertaining lessons that I ever sat in, and so I wrote a blog about it, and I want to share it with you today. So that's what we're going to do. Hang on.
I've been around the world, I've seen a lot of things that make your chicken curl.
Warning, this post contains illicit language and disturbing images, but nothing that hasn't been taught in at least one Elders Quorum lesson on pornography. Continue at your own discretion.
Several years ago, I had the Elders Quorum lesson of a lifetime. Our instructor was a convert of about 3 years, and he was in the military. Now, I tell you this so that you'll understand why he thought that the shock and awe approach was the best one to take. He also hadn't been fully acculturated into the Mormon culture to understand the subtle and not so subtle nuances of what is and is not appropriate to say out loud, or perhaps to even think quietly and keep inside your own head. So, for the sake of everyone's edification, and as a sort of Infants on Thrones public service announcement, I would like to humbly share with you today some recommendations on what is and is not an appropriate way to teach about this filthy and disgusting cancer on society within the hallowed and sometimes annoyingly fuzzy walls of a Mormon meeting house. Appropriate.
In today's day and age with the internet, pornography is more pervasive than ever. It is a filthy and disgusting cancer on society.
Not appropriate. The internet is a real son of a bitch. If you want to look something up, all you have to do is Google 15-year-old girls covered in semen, and boom, there it is. Appropriate.
Viewing pornography can lead to self-abuse. Imagine that you all have a little factory.
Not appropriate. All right, come on, guys. Now, don't think for a moment that if you're sitting alone at night looking at porn, that you aren't also doing something else. Come on, you all know what I'm talking about.
Insert explicit hand gesture here.
Appropriate.
Oh, okay, perhaps it is alright to use a reverent hand gesture, but only if the gesture is brief and understated and ends within the count of 2 Mississippi.
Not appropriate. But it's not okay if the hand gesture goes on for 30 seconds or longer while you eyeball each and every elder in the room and accompany it with facial expressions or sounds of any kind. Appropriate.
So come on, brethren, this is a serious topic and far more common than you might think. What do you all think about this?
Not appropriate. All right, Brother Ostlund, you're sitting there in the back snickering with your arms crossed. You know crossing your arms is an indication of guilt, right? So spill it. Appropriate.
Many people have serious problems with pornography. It can ruin relationships and destroy marriages.
Not appropriate. You all know that Richard and his wife are divorcing, right? Well, now you know why. Appropriate.
Pornographic images and masturbation can severely disrupt the intimacy that binds you and your wife together for time and all eternity.
Not appropriate. So, when you're choking the chicken all the time, you can actually get to a point where you lose feeling in your penis. Now, this actually happened to me with my first wife, and I could never explain to her why it had happened. I tried to hide it from her, but she could tell there was something wrong. And when I went to the doctor, he said there wasn't anything he could do about it. I had just looked at so much porn and had jerked off so much that I lost all the feeling in my penis. And trust me, elders, you don't ever want to lose the feeling in your penis. So I hope you all appreciate this IoT PSA. And if you ever do encounter a lesson like this, also don't approach your friends afterwards and say,
"Hey guys, we totally need to debrief."
So in conclusion, I want to say thank you to this former Elders Quorum instructor for delivering probably the most shocking, entertaining, and memorable Elders Quorum lesson ever. It even beats the Fandango hand puppets lesson from the guy who didn't really prepare any message at all. And finally, after listening to this, I dare any of you listeners to try and get through Barry Manilow's Trying to Get That Feeling Again without thinking about this guy's dilemma and snickering.
Doctor, my woman is coming back home late today.
Go ahead, give it a shot.
Could you maybe give me something?
If you can do that, you're a bigger person than I am.
'Cause the feeling is gone and I must get it back right away.
And delete your browser history too.
Before she sees that I've been up, down, trying to get the feeling again, all around, trying to get the feeling again, the one that made me shiver, made my knees start to quiver every time she walked in. And I've looked high, low, everywhere I possibly can, but there's no trying to get the feeling again. It seemed to disappear as fast as it came.
All right, how about we just skip to the end? You and me both, buddy. You go get it, Barry. Yeah. Get it back. Yeah. Well, they do say it's an addiction.
This is Ashley from North Yorkshire, England, and I finished my final year of a psychology degree in London. So watch out, infants, a psychologist is listening. You can comment on this episode on the website infantsonthrones.com, and if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes. Anyone for the closing prayer?
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.